when I speak as an American. Uh, Many individuals fall prey to this anything that deals with Latinos, quote unquote, attaches to other Latinos. And I think that that's a fool's errand because of the lack of control that we have over what happens in the world, what happens in our nation, and that impacts us here locally. There are too many, what would I say, too many issues that deal with why people show up here, why we are who we are in America, and having to deal with that issue all the time. And that's the point. The point is that we should not have to deal with any issue that isn't American. We first have to learn that we are Americans and that we have to evaluate each issue based on its complexity and merit. The net result of somebody jumping to anything that deals with brown people is that you don't look at this issue critically to see whether or not you should attach and whether or not your attachment is enough to make a difference. Because too many people have their hands on this issue, making it as complex as it can be. And it is complex because you're fighting or swimming upriver, as it seems, and you have decided to jump in the water and swim up that same river, when in fact that might not be where you want to be. It's a little disheartening to look at right now. For example, last night on Facebook, an issue regarding immigrant meat packers say that they're being blamed for the spread of COVID-19. And so you look at that issue and you're automatically going to say, that's not true. That's not true. But who says that? Who says it's not true that immigrant meat packers are not spreading COVID-19? That statement, just on its face value, calls for a conclusion that somebody has put out there. And there are reasons why. And so we take that personal. We people who attach everything that happens to brown people to themselves. Everything that happens to brown people to themselves. And that's just wrong. You are an American. You have to judge each issue based on Americans' perspective, and you don't. You just jump into the water and you swim upriver, not understanding the river. The river is created, and the downflow of the river is created by somebody, someplace, somewhere. It doesn't mean that it just happens naturally. It does not just happen naturally. It happens because there's a system in place that says that we need meat. We need meat. And then the fact that we need meat brings with it a lot of problems. And it is a capitalistic type of issue. It's global in a sense. Global economics are involved here. NAFTA, North Atlantic Free Trade Agreement, is at issue here. Colonialism is at issue here. And leadership. Leadership is understanding the issues and then taking whatever energy you have or influence over people and directing it in a manner that makes sense, okay? In a manner that's going to have good results. And all we're doing is keep jumping in the river, swimming upstream, and the river current is too strong, as evidenced by whatever actions need to be taken in order to right the wrong. There is no wrong here. There is no wrong in the sense that you can't say that our society is taking advantage of these individuals who forced their way into this country because they're fleeing a country or a state somewhere that's being subjective, dangerous, punitive, subordinate, etc., etc., etc. And because of that, they rush to the border looking for freedom and want to make a better life for themselves and their family. Now that's a political statement. It is not reality. It is not reality, and we have to understand that. You have to assess this situation of immigrants in a manner in which it manifests itself in America. And that's because the American economic system demands cheap labor. And so these individuals are bought from these different countries into this country illegally and given jobs illegally in these packing houses illegally. That's a lot of illegality that occurs in the face of our reality. What does that mean? It means that there's gambling going on in an establishment where they gamble. It's not, it isn't a surprise. When you have a Chamber of Commerce that does nothing about their membership, who hire these hundreds of thousands of people to work in their meat packing plants and other service type agencies, economies, and won't do anything about it, that's a plan. That's the river that you're swimming up. When you have a political head of state who demands that you're an essential worker and that you have to go to work because you're essential, you're swimming up the river. There's some more current coming down. So we just mentioned two things. We mentioned the Chamber of Commerce. They're part of this whole conspiracy. A conspiracy that's not only local, but national and global. That's the type of river you're swimming up. And the current keeps getting stronger. In order for you to fight the condition of whatever the conditions are that you're fighting for or against, that's an obstacle that you have to overcome. And we haven't done that. Not we, but the people who are advocating for that have not done that. That means that you misunderstand the situation, and all you're doing is blowing smoke. You're blowing smoke because that's what you do, is you blow smoke. Now we have the state legislature, another institution that's supposed to help you help these individuals, but won't. Knowing that these people are here illegally, quote, they're being hired illegally, quote, and they're being forced to work in dangerous conditions, quote. The river gets stronger. The current is almost too strong to survive. You're swimming up there, and you jumped in there. Everybody jumps into that river, this morass, and can't get out of that river because you don't understand the situation. The complexity of the situation. When the statement is made, when you bring it down to the micro level, and the statement is made by some jughead that immigrant meat packers are being blamed for the spread of COVID, that's a true statement. They are being blamed. There's nothing stunning about that statement. They're being blamed for spreading COVID. And then they provide proof talking about these quote unquote immigrant workers that they have because they're poor, they live in these crowded conditions. They have a culture where they go out and dance and hug and kiss and celebrate quinceañeras and what, all bringing them together in a dangerous, toxic atmosphere, which is bringing COVID to the community because of their stupidity. That's their words, not mine. Bringing COVID to us, the greater community. Now, if you there is a truth in that statement, but there are more poor people in Nebraska, actually all over the United States, that are white than there are any other poor people, ethnicity. What that means is that when you get a poor white person, they are living in the same environment that they're describing that these individuals, immigrants, live in. They can't afford a big house, so they live in close quarters. They probably have drug problems, drinking problems, can't get a job problems. That's why they're poor. And the majority of those people are white. But because we have allowed this thing to sidetrack us, I mean Americans, into saying, let's help these poor brown people. And everybody's against you. The mayor, the city council, the commissioners, the legislature, and the governor. And of course, the president. That is a river that you're going to drown in because you chose to jump in the river with these individuals who are being controlled and impacted by these different entities. And so what's your plan of action? What is your plan of action? To drive around in cars beeping horns and showing them support. And the river gets deeper and the current gets faster. You're not winning anything. What I say, what Reynaldo says, is I don't identify with those individuals because I understand that the system that brought them here is too great. And that's the system that you have to destroy in order to make things right. And we don't have the power, nor do we have the leadership, nor do we have the critical understanding of this situation. I view this situation outside my concerns because I'm an American. And as an American, you can't attach. As an American, you have to look at this from a different perspective. You can't just jump into the water because you're going to swim in among the other people who can't even swim in many cases. You have to look at it from an American perspective and say that this issue of globalization, this NAFTA agreement, is based on the capitalistic model that calls for cheap labor in order to make this system operate and create the wealth for the oligarchs. There's no river. They are the river. This is a conspiracy. This is a strategy that says we need cheap labor in order to make this economy function. And so, through all these machinations that I just talked about, and all of the support that they have with the blind eye turning the other way, actually being part of the river. The Chamber of Commerce is the river. All of the political entities are the river. And you cannot take all your energy, you cannot take all of your power that you think you have and go around for nothing. There's no leadership. In other words, there are a lot of do-gooders. And I think that they have to be given credit, but they don't think. They don't think in a manner where you're going to get results. It is critical, therefore, that you vote. And you vote blue. And I will tell you, and it's people misunderstand me, because that's a whole different lecture, is that I don't care for a two-party system. Especially Democrats and Republicans. And I'll get into that at a later date as to the poison that's inherent in that two-party system and why we don't have any movement on this issue. No movement. If there's any movement, it's by the president, who uses this stereotype of these people coming across and taking your jobs and undercutting other people who want jobs. And they should be rounded up and sent back to where they came from. That's a political statement, see? It'll never happen as long as there's a need for cheap labor. And that's how you explain, let's say 50,000 people growing to 200,000. It's 300,000 statewide and more. There's a lot more. All powerless. And you can't jump in that river. You should stay out of that river and concentrate on educating yourself as to the complexity of this system, this NAFTA, and this global economic system. You got to concentrate on that, because that's what you have to have your politicians tell you exactly how they're going to handle that. And nobody's doing that. Nobody questions Kara Eastman about this issue. It's too complex. Or Dan Bacon. They can get away with anything, saying anything, because there's no organized group or entity against them. Were they going to fight the Chamber of Commerce? I don't think so. Are they going to fight the packing houses? You can fight them all they want, all you want. It's not going to happen. People need a job. They're still going to go. They're still going to die. That's the river. The flood is coming. The flood is coming. But it won't be coming in this two-party system. And I'm not sure that you can overtake the corporate influence over our system, because that's what's running things here. Globalization, capitalism, cheap labor. It's not just cheap labor, it's a disenfranchised. And that's an outcome. That's an outcome of this system. That everybody's walking around whistling. And, what are you talking about? You're talking about immigrants? I don't know nothing about immigrants. You know, I know we have a problem.